Bismillah. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I'm actually on the West Coast this week, so it's morning still here. But good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today in this important webinar on the future of democracy in Tunisia. It is our great pleasure to welcome Dr. Professor and former President of Tunisia, Dr. Moncef Marzouki. He really needs no introduction, but I have to say that he is currently a senior fellow with the Democracy in Hard Places Initiative at the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation at Harvard University. He, of course, served as the first democratically elected president of Tunisia from the end of 2011 until end of 2014. So for 3 years, he was president of Tunisia. He is a doctor of medicine. He's a human rights activist and author of numerous books on political philosophy in the Arab world. Dr. Professor Marzouki is Tunisia's first president in the first fair and transparent elections. He has a long history of struggling for human rights and democracy in Tunisia since the 70s. He was the founder of the center-left Congress Party for the Republic, which was one of the parties that formed the governmental coalition from November 2011 till February 2014. In 2015, Dr. Marzouki founded the Movement for Popular Citizenship, Harak al-Shab, Shab al-Muwatinin, a civil movement seeking to encourage active citizen participation among all Tunisians, particularly those marginalized under the previous regimes. More recently, in December 2021, Dr. Professor and former President Marzouki was sentenced to 4 years in prison in absentia and found guilty of undermining the security of the state from abroad, for having caused diplomatic harm because of his criticism of the coup in Tunisia. Marzouki rejected the ruling, describing it as illegal, saying it was issued by an illegitimate president who overturned the constitution. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Marzouki today. He will speak for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we will have about 40 minutes for Q&A. This meeting and this webinar is on the record, so feel free to quote anything that former President Marzouki says today. We have a large number of Tunisia experts and followers of Tunisia who are with us today. Almost more than 140 have registered, but so far we have 50 people who have joined this webinar. So during the Q&A session, you can join the debate and the question and answer period in 3 ways, either by using the chat function and asking in the question in chat, or by raising your hand. And in that case, we will try to give you the microphone and you can speak for up to 2 minutes, either to make a comment or ask a question. And also you can use the Q&A function, which sends the question directly to the panelists and the moderator. Again, it's a pleasure to welcome all of you this morning to this important, very important webinar. As you all know, the situation in Tunisia continues to deteriorate rapidly, both politically and economically, as well as socially, of course. And President Kais Saied continues to undermine all the democratic rules, all the institutions that have been established after the revolution. And lately, just last week, he declared that he wants to change the electoral code that he himself wrote about a month ago. So he can write the law anytime he wants without any consultation, and he can change the law any way he wants without any consultation. I mean, this is really unprecedented in the history of Tunisia, and I think in the history of any country, that you have a president writing the law by himself, the electoral law, which is such an important law. He is basically banning all political parties from participating in this election, or so-called election. As we all know, it will be a fake election, because he has also appointed the electoral commission that will oversee this so-called election. And the number of observers, as we saw during the referendum in July, was very limited, only about 1,000 observers when you have 12,000 polling stations. So even if the observers do a fantastic job, they can only oversee and observe less than 10% of the polling stations, which means that 90% of the polling stations remain without any observation and any independent, let's say, control over the procedures of the election and the counting and so on. So the situation is very alarming, and we are very happy today to have a professor and former President Marzouki, and we have asked him today really to tell us how he thinks a democracy can be restored. What are the steps that Tunisians and Tunisian Democrats need to take to restore democracy in Tunisia? So thank you, Professor, former President Marzouki, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I would like to welcome all of you, and to thank Dr. Radwan Masmoudi and the Center for Study of Islam and Democracy for this opportunity to talk about the situation in Tunisia. As Dr. Radwan Masmoudi said, Tunisia is facing a real, very, very bad situation. In fact, there are two questions about Tunisia today. The first question is, where are we heading? You know, if the current situation would continue, what will be the output? And the answer is very easy. We are heading toward a real disaster. And the second question, of course, is what to do to prevent Tunisia, you know, to face this disaster. It's very difficult, you know, to say what's going to happen in let's say, in the next few months, because politicians are just like meteorologists, you know. They cannot foresee long term, but they can give some prediction about the near future. And unfortunately, when we analyze the political and the economic situation in Tunisia, you can be sure that we are heading to a real disaster, a real catastrophe. Why? Because Tunisia is facing three major crises at the same time, and these crises are deeply linked, and they are getting worse day by day. First, we have to understand first, before giving the treatment, as a doctor, I have always to be sure that the diagnosis is sure. So I have to say in words about the diagnosis, about the three major crises. The political crisis is mainly due to the fact that we have, I have always said that we have a man who is not fit for the job. A man with, I have always said as a doctor, that he has real serious mental health problems. And I am extremely shocked by the fact that the people are not, they don't understand the fact. They are just like people, you know, looking at the sun at noon in a summer day and refusing to say that this is a sun. Because this is the problem. The problem is that we have a president that never talked to the opposition, never talked to anybody, never listened to anybody. He is just in his own world. He said himself that he's from another world, and I do believe that he's from another world. He's really deeply engulfed in his thoughts about sort of like a messiah, you know. He's seeing himself as somebody who's solved all the Tunisian problem with a new constitution, a new society, a new economy, etc. And this is what's completely, I would say, this is exactly what have destroyed Libya, because Libya have had this kind of leadership. And you know what happened to Libya. Libya has been completely destroyed because Gaddafi also thought that he is going to change the world, that he has new thoughts that have never been, that never existed before, etc., etc. So we have a president that clearly is unfit for the job, talking to nobody. I can assure you that during my presidency and even during the presidency of President Moncef, it was very common that the president is talking to the opposition all the time. I used to talk to the opposition all the time. Every Friday, I used to have the leader of the opposition around the lunch or a dinner, and we used to talk, and a lot of problems have been solved because of this way of dealing of the political problem in a country, in a small country like us, or like ours, where everybody should talk to everybody. So this man is never talking to anybody, and he continues to pursue his chimerical projects of new social and political order in the only understand. But the most important thing is he's really totally cut off of the main concern of Tunisian. Oh, today, Tunisian, I can assure you, today, this morning, the Tunisian are running after gas, running after some food stuff like sugar, like milk, etc., etc. And this, what's the main problem for this man? Is the new election of a parliament. Everybody knows that this parliament will have no power at all, and Tunisians are totally disinterested, that have no interest in this election. But our president is only interested in things that do not interest any Tunisian. So this is part of the political crisis. But the political crisis has also another side. It's the opposition. The opposition is weak, and the opposition has no credibility, mainly because this divided between people working with Islamists, people against Islamists. As the main problem of Tunisia now is, are you with another or are you against another? The problem should be, are you with the coup or are you against the coup? But because of the divided and the weakness of the opposition, I am afraid that the Tunisian people doesn't see an alternative. You know, when you want to change things, you have to have an alternative. If you don't have an alternative, you can just say, okay, let's wait. And it's the political crisis is not only the crisis of the system; it's only the crisis. It's also the crisis of the opposition. And now the problem is that in spite of this situation, the population itself, engulfed in the difficulties of daily life, doesn't seem to be ready, you know, to a new revolution. Maybe because they are afraid of chaos. Maybe people are afraid of, you know, having once again the same people, the government, etc. But now the political crisis is that you have the weakness of the power, the weakness of the opposition, and the weakness of the population, which is not taking to the street for the moment, or sometimes from time to time, and not very efficiently. So in such situation, history shows that the society goes through a phase of implosion, where social bonds deteriorate and where you have anger and frustration in hearts and mind. And then after this period of implosion, you will have always explosion. This is what's going to happen. Tunisia is like a volcano, you know, the pressure is going on and on and on, and then you will have the explosion. And this explosion could be a very violent explosion, and we could unfortunately have to face a new chapter of Tunisian history that we have always tried to avoid, which means change by force and by violence. The problem also that this political crisis is deeply linked with the economic crisis. Of course, we suffer in Tunisia because of the war in Ukraine. Of course, there are external factors, but the most important fact is Tunisia is suffering from, you know, a poor and deteriorating economy, and this since the revolution. Because the main problem of the economy of Tunisia is that we have we have had from the revolution up to now a continuous political instability. Imagine that under my presidency, there were 3 governments. Under the presidency of Bashir al-Assad, 3 other governments, and now we have also 3 other governments, which means that we have had 9 governments in 11 years, which means that every government would last just 1 year. No government can tackle the real problem, the structural problem of the economy or any social problem, other social problems, when it can last just one year. And the economy suffers political instability. And this man, this president, this putschist president, has increased the political instability, because for the moment, nobody knows exactly what would happen. And of course, in those circumstances, foreign investors or even internal investors will say, no, I'm not, it's the situation is too unstable, let's wait. And this is why the economy is at standstill, and this is why the economy is getting, the economic situation is getting worse and worse every day. Then came, of course, the crisis of Ukraine, which aggravates the situation. Just a word about the social and psychological crisis, which not addressed by many people. People would talk only about political crisis or economic crisis. For me, the most important crisis is the psychological crisis and the moral crisis. Tunisians are all today depressed. They don't see they don't have any hope. They believe that the worst is to come. And a lot of Tunisians now are fleeing the country by illegal or illegal means. And it's heartbreaking to see our youth, leaving the country by all means, because they don't believe that Tunisia is no longer a country that where can they live and where can they raise their children, etc. So this is why I do believe that we are heading to a disaster. If here we have to do something to avoid the disaster. Now the question is, what should be done? And then how we can achieve the objective. What should be done is, for me, clear. It's, it's the end of the coup. It's the end of the dictatorship. That this guy, this putschist president, must be removed, because believing that we can have a kind of dialogue with this man for a political reform or political transition is completely, forget about it. Because of his poor mental health status, this man would never discuss anything. And to discuss with him about what kind of discussion should we have? What kind of dialogue? Do you think that this guy would accept, to come back to the situation before the coup? Of course, he always said that no way to come back to the former situation. While we do know that the only way to solve the political problem is to come back to before the coup of 2021. So it's the responsibility of everybody, to remove this man from office, because this is the only way, to be able to solve the political problem. What I'm trying to say, that it's the responsibility of everybody, to put an end to the coup and to restore the democracy and to come back to the situation before 2021, even if it was not a very good situation, but it was much better than what we are living today. So we have the responsibility, we have 3 levels of responsibility, to achieve this objective. The first level is, it's the responsibility of Tunisians themselves. It's the responsibility mainly of the youth, to understand that no future, can be hoped or achieved if they don't move, if they don't take to the street, if they don't do what the Algerian youth did. And here we have the example of the Algerian, during the Hirak of 2019. Remember that the Algerian people took to the street 52 weeks. And this was something extraordinary for me, because at the time, everybody was saying the Arab Spring is over. And I said, no, the Arab Spring is just at the beginning of the beginning. Look what happened in Algeria. The Algerian as the good example of the people, the whole people taking to the street to get rid of a sick and incapable president, which is the case exactly of Qais Said. He's sick and he's incapable of to reach to lead the country. Of course, people would say, "Hey, but of course, the Algerian president Bouteflika gone. In fact, he was replaced by another man from the same system." Okay, that's true. But even, you know, if we can replace this man by another man from the system, it will be much better because we will have somebody who probably sane, and then can with him we can talk and we can achieve a kind of agreement or kind of consensus, which is totally impossible now with this man. So the first level of responsibility, the responsibility of the youth of the people. And I know that the opposition has called for a demonstration in the, I think, next Saturday, the 15th. And I called all the Tunisian youth, you know, to take to the street and to begin what I call a democratic and peaceful resistance to the coup. We have to do it. It's not a matter of just, you know, go to the demonstration once every 3 months, like actually the situation. It's to go to take to the street every week until the coup is ended. This is the only way to do it. It's the way that the Algerian shows it, and I think it was the best thing. Now, the second level of the responsibility is I would say the level of state official. I do believe that people within the state, I'm not talking about the deep state, I'm talking about the official, the state, the Tunisian state. They understand, they do know that this man is the most destructive forces against the Tunisian state. He's destroying the Tunisian state. He has destroyed the constitution. He has destroyed all the independent bodies like you know, all the independent commission for justice, independent commission against corruption, independent commission for the judiciary, etc. This guy has destroyed all the structure of democratic society, and now he's destroying the parliament that he's trying, you know, to set up is of course it's a parody of parliament. This man is destroying the state, and it is the responsibility of all the the officials Tunisian, to defend the state, because without the state, with the corrupt and destroy the state, it will be the chaos in our country. We have to defend the state, and this is why I asked the military, you know, the military to solve the problem, because if they don't solve the problem now, they could be, I say, it could be in very soon in a situation where probably they would have to confront the population. And I know that our army has never confronted the population. So if we don't, if the military and not only the military, but all the structure of the state do not want Tunisia to face a new chaos or new outbursts of violence, there is no way. This man must be removed as soon as possible. And once again, I am not asking for a military coup, because what I say is that this man has to be removed, and immediately we have to go back to the people with free elections under the constitution of 2014, of course, so Tunisia could, as soon as possible, you know, restore the state, have a healthy man at the head of the state, stop this, you know, this fantasy, something incredible, you know, to what's happening in Tunisia today. So this is the responsibility of the military, it's the responsibility of the police, it's the responsibility of the judiciary, it's the responsibility of the administration, it's the responsibility of all the state officials, because once again, we have to defend the state, because the state is in danger, and the state is attacked by this man who has sworn to destroy our state. And if our state is destroyed, we will face the situation in Lebanon, and then the Tunisia would face really dire situation. So the first level of responsibility is the responsibility of the youth to take to the street, the responsibility of the state official, and the responsibility, of course, to the opposition. The opposition must unite, must give to the country a new alternative. They must stop this divided between pro-Islamist and against Islamists. The divided in Tunisia has been and it remains between those for the democracy and those against democracy, those for the coup and those against the coup. This is the real divide. All other divide is artificial, and it's way to lose our time. It's to lose our effort, etc. Now I'll finish by the third level, the responsibility of our friends of and all the international donors. So it happens that I'm now here in the United States, in Boston, and I have to answer the question, to say some words about the position of the government of the United States to the water coup. I deeply regret that the Biden administration didn't recognize the coup as a coup, because it is a coup. And I know they don't want to recognize the coup as a coup, probably because, let's say, because under the American law, they would have to cut any kind of, of help to the Tunisian government, etc. But it is a coup. It is a coup. And fortunately, the African Court of Human Rights has recognized the coup as a coup. And I do believe that it's up to our friends, democratic states, to accept that Tunisia is now victim of a coup and that we are going back to a dictatorship. And here it happened that sometimes I say, look, the United States or the Western countries, they have always supported our dictatorship, mainly in the Middle East. And now look what's happening. Look at what's happening. The Emirati regime, the Saudi regime, the Egyptian regime, now they are supporting, during this war, they are supporting Russia. And they are spreading they are fighting for the Chinese and the Russian models. So I don't understand, really, I don't understand how can the United States or Western country, because of this fear of instability, they would support countries supporting, the most important danger for me for the West, which is the Chinese model, the spreading of the Chinese model and the Russian model in the Arab world and in Africa. So, but don't misunderstand me. I'm not asking for any kind of intervention, because once again, I know that democracy cannot be imported, democracy cannot be exported. Democracy is an internal matter of a society. If we don't reach by ourselves democracy, forget about it. Look at what happened in Iraq. It was a real catastrophe. I'm not asking for the intervention of the Americans or the European in our internal affairs. It's our duty, it's our job, to move and to establish a real democracy in our country. But it's the duty of our friends, to help us only by not supporting the dictatorship. That's all what we are asking for. Now, I will end with the last question, which is the international donors, the role of the international donors, especially the International Monetary Fund. You know that it's in final stage of negotiation, a loan of $4 million to the Tunisian regime. Of course, I want this money, to go to Tunisia, because I hope and I believe that it could alleviate the suffering of the ordinary Tunisian. This is why I totally support this loan. Just because I hope, I believe that it can be useful for a small part of the Tunisian population. But it's also important to know that this money will be used to prolong the agony of the regime. It will help this regime, which is once again the threat against our democracy, a threat against our economic development. It will help him to survive I don't know, maybe 1 year, 2 years, I don't know, but it will help him to survive. So the situation is extremely difficult because on one hand, we have to support this loan because it will help. Some part of the money would help part of the Tunisian people, and I am interested in alleviating the suffering of my fellow citizens. But at the same time, I know that unfortunately this money would lead to to help the bureaucracy of the dictatorship to thrive. So this is why I say if condition must to be put on this loan, it's mainly about being sure that the money will go to the help to create jobs, or would help to to go to the poorest part of the population and not to the bureaucracy. Because I don't believe that this guy would accept any political condition. I'm sure that he would accept the Tunisian to starve instead of changing his policies. So the only condition that should be put is where this money is going, to be sure that this money is not going to the bureaucracy of the dictatorship, but to the needy people. So I'm going to end because time is running out. So, well, despite all this difficulty, but despite all this problem, I do believe that Tunisian can get out of this very difficult situation. I remember that in December 2011, we were all desperate. We were all saying that Tunisia is lost forever. And then we have had the Arab Spring. We have had this 3 years of hope of building a new society, a new democratic state. Unfortunately, we have had the counter-revolution, and we have this historical accident, than having this man as president. But I still believe that we can get through. I still believe that Tunisian has resources, moral and psychological resources, men and women that can realize a good future for Tunisia. So, in fact, what to expect? Life has taught me that the future never brings what we fear the most or what we hope for the most, but surprises us the most. So maybe we are going to have surprises very soon. I don't know what kind of surprises. They could be good surprises. They could be also bad surprises. All we have to do is to be ready. We have to react to both good and bad and good surprises, while working, of course, to ensure the good surprises outweigh the bad surprises. So, تحية تونس. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Marzouki and President Marzouki, for your excellent remarks. We have about 40 minutes for Q&A. So again, you can ask your questions in 3 different ways, either in the Q&A section or in the chat section, or if you'd like to speak and we can hear you, and all the participants can hear you, and if you want even see you on video, you can raise your hand and we will give you the microphone. Let me start by asking the first question, Dr. Marzouki. You mentioned that we need to go back to the 2014 constitution. And of course, I agree with you. That is the only solution, is to go back to the 2014 pre-coup constitution. But there are a number of Tunisians today who have been convinced by the media in Tunisia that the constitution of 2014 did not provide an efficient government, did not provide an efficient system that can solve the needs, whether they are economic or political or social needs of the Tunisians. And so how can we go back to the 2014 constitution and without going back to the same problems and the same let's say dead end or sometimes stalemate constitution that we had, or stalemate parliament that we have? How can we reform the 2014 constitution, while at the same time moving forward with the democratic process? Do you have some suggestions? I'm sure this question is on the minds of a lot of Tunisians.
Of course, but I can assure you that Tunisians were victim of silly and dishonest propaganda. Because if we have had problems, it's not because of the constitution. It is mainly because of the electoral code. This was the main problem, because the electoral code is made in such a way that you will have a patchwork in the parliament, and that you cannot have a majority. And this political code has been set just, to prevent a Nahda to have a majority. And I have always said, I am not pro-Nahda, I am a secularist, and have always said, look, we need a majority to govern this country. If the majority is Nahda majority, why not? If this Nahda would succeed, it would be good for the country. But if Nahda doesn't succeed, then we will have a new election, and then we will have another majority, so we can solve the problem of the country. But because, people, the people who have set the electoral code in 2011 have just one objective, to prevent another to have the majority. Now we are the victim of this political, this electoral code, because we couldn't have a stable government because of this damned electoral law. All we had to change is the electoral law, so we can have a majority. I don't mind whether this majority is Islamist or secularist. I don't mind. I want this majority to stick to by the rule of democracy, and that will be okay. Now, people, I remember that, well, yes, power is not in one hand, etc. Now you have the power in one hand. Now you have now you can see. Now you can compare what's to live under a system where we have check and balance, where powers are well described, and now you have this man who has all the power. Have you seen any important change in your condition? Of course not. So now it will be. I think I wouldn't say that. Fortunately, we have had this counter-revolution, because people would compare between what's to live under the rule of law, the rule of a real constitution, and the rule of one man, and with the constitution where he took all the powers. People are seeing the differences.
Also, I have a second question or follow-up to your speech. You mentioned about the IMF loan, or the possibility of an IMF loan, that there must be political conditions attached to the loan. What kind of political conditions would you like to see attached to the loan?
No, I said that political condition would be, let's say, restore the constitution of 2014. Of course, this man will never accept. I don't believe that there will be political condition, but economic condition, saying we are going to give this money, but we want to be sure that this money would go to the needy, to create jobs, etc., and not just to function your system, to stay in power as long as possible. This is acceptable, I think. If the IMF would see that this money would just be for the functioning of the state and to remain in power, of course it would be silly, to once again to prolong the agony of the system.
But shouldn't it be up to the Tunisian institutions, such as the parliament or independent judiciary, to monitor the budget of the state and how the money is being spent? Shouldn't it be? Yeah.
Of course, but the problem is that we don't have any parliament. We don't have any independent structure, etc. So you cannot ask for things that do not exist.
Okay. We have a question from former Ambassador Herman Cohen. Actually, two questions. The first question from Ambassador Cohen is, does the regime show signs of corruption?
Well, the problem of corruption is extremely complex in Tunisia. You have corruption everywhere. I can say that we failed tackling this problem because we have short, in 3 years, you cannot tackle such a problem. But for the moment, I think the whole system is corrupt, and the president is talking all the time about fighting corruption, but he did nothing. Under my presidency, we have seized more than 300 companies. 300 companies. We succeeded, to have some money back from stolen money from Tunisia. We could have it back in Tunisia. But now, when you compare what has been done during my presidency and what is done now, for the moment, you see the wide difference. He's just talking all the time about corruption, but nothing is changing.
No, what about corruption of the people within the new regime of Qais Said and the people around Qais Said themselves? There are rumors that they themselves are involved in corruption.
Yes, there are rumors, but I'm not going to take about rumors. I have been victim of rumors myself. I wouldn't comment, but I know that this man has no intention, probably, and no possibility to tackle the problem.
Okay, second question from former Ambassador Herman Cohen. Is it accurate to say that the Ennahda regime was more interested in promoting religious law than in modern governance?
No, at all. I can assure you, I have a lot of problems with Ennahda, but can assure you that never Ennahda tried, to impose any religious law. I can assure you that we have had a lot of discussion before the constitution was drawn about the word Sharia. And I remember that the Sheikh Rashid al-Ghannouchi wanted the word Sharia to be in the constitution, and I convinced him that it will be unacceptable for the secularist part of the population, and he accepted. So it's not true to say that Ennahda had tried anything to impose any kind of Sharia or any kind of religious law.
Okay. We have a question from William Lawrence, Professor William Lawrence. How can the military and the bureaucracy force Qais Said out? And the most important precondition is a long hirak, like a street protests, but that this has not happened yet.
Yes, it has not happened because of the COVID situation, and also because this summer was extremely hot in Tunisia. So and people also was exhausted and very tired, etc. But now, for the moment, I think there will be something like the hirak, and then I guess that the military is just waiting for the population to take the street, because I know very well the military, because I have been the head of this military as president. I know them very well. I know they are patriotic, and I'm sure that they are not very happy with this man. So when we are going to have the hirak, I think they would force him to resign, because this man has he used to have a kind of popular support the first year. But now he's really the whole population, even his supporters now, are saying that this man is not fit for the office. So it's obvious for everybody that he must be removed. And I think that would happen. They are just waiting the people to take the street to remove him.
Okay. We have a question from Professor John Kerry. And he has raised his hand, so I'm going to allow him to speak. Professor Kerry, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I want to follow up on your comment about electoral reform. I agree with you. You made a point that the electoral law should provide greater rewards for larger parties and larger alliances. And I agree. I think the electoral code needs to reward coalitions as opposed to fragmentation. But I'm wondering if you can offer any further specifics on how exactly the law should be modified to achieve that goal.
Well, this is probably the most important question, because now if this man is removed, we cannot organize a new election under the electoral law, the current electoral law. So, in fact, the parliament has to come back and then to discuss a new electoral law, and this would be possible. Otherwise, see any kind of any solution.
So what you're saying, Dr. Marzouki, is we have to reinstate the previous parliament, or we have to elect a new parliament?
No,
No.
Electing a new parliament will be, our problem has been that we have taken a lot of time in transitional period. The transitional period was an error. Economy cannot wait years and years until you reach an agreement, a political agreement. We have to go to once again to go to the polls and ask the people to choose a new parliament. I don't know. Maybe if we have we can agree within this parliament or without this parliament on a new electoral code, which able to give any party majority, so we can once again have a majority to govern the country. Otherwise, the patchwork now of political party would be a new catastrophe.
Okay, we have a question from Ambassador Herman Cohen, or former Ambassador Herman Cohen. Go ahead, please. Ambassador Cohen. You are muted, Ambassador Cohen. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, you're still muted. We cannot hear you, Ambassador Cohen. There is a button to unmute yourself, I think, at the bottom of the screen. Okay, it's not working. Maybe we'll come back later to Ambassador Cohen. We have a question from Mu'az Zemni. Go ahead, Mu'az.
Thank you, Dr. Masmoudi. Thank you, Dr. Marzouki and President Marzouki, actually, for this time. I agree with your diagnosis 100%. You put your finger right on it. You remind me of former governor and Dr. Howard Dean, former governor of Vermont, who was really outspoken and putting things straight into perspective. Now, from what I see, this coup has been going on for too long. And the divide, the polarization among the political parties in Tunisia, and the dislike for Nahda has created a big divide in the country that they forgot about the coup. They don't want to go back just because they don't like Nahda. Exactly. Now, how can we bridge that divide and bring back the people, change their conscience, change their state of mind? Because no salvation, I think, comes either from God or from the people themselves. We cannot depend on the military or the légitimité or an outside power. The salvation is from ourselves, Tunisians. We need to take matters in our own hands and don't just wait for America or the military or for other countries to come in and step in and make sacrifices. Democracy does not come cheap. And as long as the people in Tunisia are still sleeping, are not aware of what they're taking and forgetting about their hate and dislike, ideological hate for Nahda, they're going to stay like that. And that reminds me of Madeleine Albright's statement when they told her, well, the children of Iraq were starving. You got to take off these embargoes on Iraq. She said, let them starve. And that was the statement she made. So are we going to do that parallel on Tunisia and let the people starve as long as this dictator and putschist remains in power? This is where I'm asking you, sir, how to move the Tunisians to take matters and to go to the palace in Carthage, head straight on and remove them. That's the only solution, don't you think? Thank you.
Well, as I told you, the problem is the opposition has no credibility because of this divided and because this conflict, this I would say structural conflict between some kind of secularists. I myself secularist, you know that, and the Nada. And of course, Nada made a lot of mistakes. Sure, I am the first. I have always denounced it, the way that Nada tackled the problem of how to deal with the old political system, etc., etc. But now, for the moment, I always say, look, Tunisia is growing. Tunisia is, the state is being destroyed. We are in a very, very difficult, tough situation. So please, let's forget about the personal problem or political problem. Just try to work together, to topple this dictator, and then we can sit and discuss what went wrong during the 10 years and what we must do, to save Tunisia from the bankruptcy and from this disaster we are heading towards. Well, this is what I'm telling the different political leaders in Tunisia. I'm all the time, in contact with them. I'm trying, to make them reach a kind of consensus. I'm not desperate. I think maybe because of the worsening of the situation, people would accept, to sit together and talk to give the Tunisian people a kind of hope. But look, if the political leaders won't be able, to accept that the situation is too serious, too dire, obliging them to sit and to find a consensus, I think we will have a new wave of probably new wave of virus, and maybe we will have new leaders that would come and say, we are going to tackle the problem, you, the old people, stay away. I don't know. As I told you, we must be ready, to accept a lot of surprises. Some of the surprises good, and some, unfortunately, very bad.
Thank you. We have Mr. Alex Sutton from the IRI, the International Republican Institute office, is the director of the IRI office in Tunisia. Go ahead, Alex, please.
Hi, good afternoon, President Marzouki. It's a real pleasure to join a call where you're speaking. Thank you, and thanks to Radwan for once again hosting a very timely and important group. I guess I have a couple of questions based on your comments. I'll try to move through them super quickly here. One was, you mentioned that Tunisia is like a volcano. I'm based there, although I'm making this call from Washington. I am struggling to, I certainly see the economic crisis. I see, I observe the dissatisfaction and sort of the disconnectivity of people with what's going on. But I think for many observers, it's hard to sort of see how it's like a volcano. So I would like maybe, just to hear a little bit more on that. The second is, you talk, I think very correctly, and you're not the first on these calls, to talk about the need for the political actors to step up. And, we call it the opposition. I define the opposition by those who oppose, right? So they're not all lined up. But in what scenario, if there is any, and how soon, do you actually see where the world's, the universes of NADA, PDL, and the UGTT trade union, all sort of, even though they might not be on one platform, on one sort of, one place announcing joint activity, because I don't think that will ever happen, of course. But where do those things begin to overlap so that the pressure is observed almost, singularly? And then I guess the third one is, you made a comment about it being obvious to everyone that Kaysad needs to be removed. I would you know, I would push back with all due respect, sir, and say polling doesn't always reflect that. Kayside, although I question whether, you know, how quote unquote popular President Said is, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's any research out there that says everyone agrees he needs to be removed. I think that's, I haven't seen any data for that. And then finally, just, you said that the IMF, a deal could buy him 1 or 2 years, which I find extraordinary because, you know, my understanding is that IMF deal is fairly close. So the time for sort of going back and forth with input on the political, you know, necessities for this sort of is over. That's my take. If you have an alternative kind of assessment, of course, I would love to hear that. But if it is 1 or 2 years just by getting a loan, then I wonder how we then go back and view all of these other factors, if in fact that loan is coming. Thanks. Sorry for the long and segmented question, but this is such a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, many questions. I will try to respond the latest about the IMF. Look, what I'm afraid of is not only that the loan could prolong the agony of the system, but you know, Tunisia is the Tunisian people now is really suffering from very, very bad political situation. So the remedy of the IMF, which is the reforms, of course, I know that the reforms are necessary. Of course, maybe we have been too late, you know, to undertake this reform. Maybe we haven't been enough courage, you know, to undertake this reform on time. But now, you know that the result or the fruit of this reform would be a long term. But in the short term, what would happen is that those reforms would probably promote more and more suffering for Tunisia. And this, you know, adding suffering to the current suffering may lead to a new explosion. And maybe this loan of the IMF, the condition put by the IMF, maybe they would really, I would say, worsen the situation, the political situation, the economic situation, something, and the volcano would burst. And then I come back to the image of the volcano. I have always said that the Arab Spring is not accurate image. The image is volcano because within a volcano you have necessary ingredient, and this necessary ingredient for the explosion in Tunisia now are all there. You know, the political crisis, the economic situation, the despair of population, etc., etc. You have all the ingredients, and of course, as geologists, we do not exactly know how the different forces would work. You know, to this is why we never can say that this volcano would explode next year at that time. But you do know that the volcano would explode, and I can assure you that Tunisian volcano, the Egyptian volcano, probably the Algerian volcano would explode one day or another. And now about the responsibility, the fact that Qais Said, while polls, etc., maybe he's popular, there are no data saying that he must be removed. The problem is that things are, you know, are worsening day after day, and it's obvious for the population that he is not fit for the office, that he is aware of their concern about the daily problem. And I can assure you that he has lost a lot of support. I know that in 2021, after the coup, he was very popular among a large part of the population, but he has lost all support. Even his supporters now are, you know, are leaving him one by one, because it's obvious for all the population that this man is not once again fit for the office. So let's see what's going to happen. Now about the divide of the responsibility once again of the opposition. I told you that I'm really very upset by the fact that all divided between secularists and the Islamists, or pro-Islamist, or people working with the Islamists like me are still there. And we don't have any choice, to remove this divide. By what means? By talking, by discussing. There are a lot of discussion going on now in Tunisia. I am behind some of them, and I hope that we will achieve some one day or another some consensus about the fact maybe that the Nada would maybe a little bit be in retreat. So the secularist party, including the secularist party, working with the Nada, would reach a kind of consensus, to confront the dictatorship. But things are the process is going on. Well, I cannot assure you what would happen tomorrow, because once again I said that we have to be very, very ready to any kind of surprise.
Thank you. We have a question from Jose Ignacio Hernandez. He is also a fellow at the Kennedy School of Government, where you are, President Marzouki. So welcome, Jose. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you so much. President Marzouki, is quite an honor. Dr. Radwan, again, thank you so much for organizing this conversation. And I want to ask you, President Marzouki, about how can we help to change the narrative of the Tunisia crisis. Tunisia is not an isolated case. One of the lessons that the 21st century is bringing is that democracies are dying from the inside out, usually covered by constitutional formalities, and that create a problem, because from the outside perspective, it is possible to conclude that what is happening in Tunisia is a domestic affair protected by the non-intervention principle, and therefore international community has not a word to say regarding the Tunisia situation. But if we are able to look behind this constitutional veil, what is happening in Tunisia, as you properly characterize, is a coup d'etat. It's a continuous coup d'etat, covered by constitutional formalities, but in essence, an authoritarian measure that is decimating constitutional democracy, and as you said, is heading to a total disaster, not only in human rights terms, but also in economic development terms. So how can we help to change the narrative regarding Tunisia in order to explain that regarding these constitutional formalities, what is happening in Tunisia is a coup d'etat, gross violation not only of the 2014 constitution, but also the international human rights, as was decided recently by the African Court on Human Rights. How can we help President Marzouki to help to change the narrative about what is happening in Tunisia as a necessary condition to engage in a constructive alliance with the international community to help the Tunisian people to bring democracy back to the country? Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I would like it's very, very important to remember that Tunisia is not an island, and Tunisia is submitted also to the external factors. What's happening in Tunisia is not an isolated case. You have to remember that Arab Spring has been, I would say, has been killed everywhere by civil war in Egypt, by civil war in Libya, by civil war in Syria, by civil war in Yemen, by a coup, a military coup in Egypt, and now by this constitutional coup. So you have to link the situation of Tunisia now to the situation of all the Arab other countries. And here the international level has to be well explained. We are victims, I can say we are victims, not only of our own, our weaknesses or our, but also because there is a real, I would say, decision at the national, regional level, and maybe at the international level, that that democracy is not for Arabs, that democracy is not for Tunisian. And this is why we have had to face alone, you know, this counter-revolution everywhere. And this is why we have lost, unfortunately, the battle against the constitution. You know that behind the liquidation of the Arab Spring, you have the Emirati regime, you have the Saudi regime, and maybe behind them you have also foreign powers. So the narrative is not to say, hey, look, the poor Tunisian, they were, you know, they're trying, you know, to set up a constitution, but now they have had a coup. This coup, nobody knows where it comes from. No, this coup, it comes from, you know, the political decision taken at the regional level, and the regional level are all clients of the United States, the Emirates and the Saudi and the Egyptian regime are clients of the United States. And here, the narrative is to go to the origin of the problem and to put the pressure on the US government, as we are here in the United States, to say, look, you are supporting this kind of regime, destroying the revolution everywhere and destroying it at the cradle of the Arab Spring, Tunisia. And those people who are, those states, your client states now are working against you. Look what's happened with that position in the war of Ukraine. They sided with Russia. They are all this regime, Emirati, Saudi, and Egyptian regime. You know, they are spreading false hopes in the Arab world by saying, look, the best, in fact, the best model is the Chinese and the Russian model, and not the democratic model. So this is the most important thing, I think. Here in the United States, you can stress on, say, you are supporting regimes that are working against your ideals and your interests everywhere.
Thank you.
Last question, please.
We have about 7 more minutes, so we're going to take 2 questions, inshallah, very quickly. The first one, which I think is very important, from Wafa Ben Hussein. She's a young Tunisian lawyer for human rights who works here in Washington, D.C. And I think it's a very important question that needs to be addressed. So her question is, greetings. I am heartened to hear you speak about the psychological crisis in Tunisia. Do you think that due to that crisis, Tunisians are slowly missing the ability to dream, a critical component to building the Tunisia we want to see? What will it take to restore that, to restore the ability to dream?
Well, it's very, very important question. I thank you for this question, because I always say that we miss the most important. We always talk about a political crisis, economic crisis. Well, the deepest crisis is the crisis of the Tunisian psyche, if I may say. Tunisians are sad. Tunisians are pessimistic. Tunisians do not believe in anything. Do not believe in any politician also, and this is very, very, very upsetting for me. I remember that in 2011, everybody was dreaming of a new Tunisia. Everybody was hopeful that we are going, to be a new nation, a new people, a new state, etc., etc. Well, the crime I am talking about, the crime of the counter-revolution is that we all this hope, has vanished. But I do believe that we still have the possibility to dream, and we have, and mainly the youth, they have the possibility and they have the duty to dream of a new Tunisia. Otherwise, it will be really a nightmare.
How do we restore that, Professor Marzouki? How do we give hope to the younger people, younger generation in Tunisia?
They have to fight. Nobody would give you anything. It's up to you, to go to take to the street. It's up to you, to give the example. It's up to some people like me, to restore hope by talking that there is a way out, etc., etc. It's our responsibility to all Tunisians to do that.
Okay, and last question from Mr. Ibrahim Bisharat. He's actually also raising his hand, so I'm going to allow him to speak, and he will ask his question directly. Go ahead, Ibrahim. Ibrahim?
Yes, good evening. Oh, good morning.
Yeah.
I am in Istanbul. Thank you for Dr. Radwan for this session, and thank you for Dr. Moncef Marzouki also for this session. Actually, my question is about, from my readings on literature review on the democratic transition in Tunisia as the successful example in the Arab world, that before the revolution on Ben Ali, there were about 5 years of talking between the secularists and Islamists. And they were agreeing that on the day after Ben Ali, and that was one of the underlying successes of the Tunisian revolution afterwards, that there was an agreement how to work together, not like what happened in Egypt, fortunately. Now, what are the options and what are the possibilities that they work together on that? And also, at the same time, how to repair the mistakes that has been taking place in the area's government, especially to respond to the people's needs, because there's no option, I think, to also to come and to wait, but like what happened to Ben Ali, to wait 20 years in order to make the change. And that's why I asked this question: how can they work together?
Look, in 2003, I organized a meeting. Secret meeting between the different political parties, Islamist, secularist, even communist, etc. And we had a discussion during 3 days and 3 nights in a remote village in France. And I can assure you that it's because of this gathering that the constitution was easy to draw, and that we can have the possibility of this government between the Islamist party and the 2 secularist party. So this was what I would call the miracle of the Tunisian miracle, because we reached at the moment a kind of consensus. Unfortunately, we lost this consensus during the period of the 10 last years. Now we have to restore this kind of agreement, otherwise Tunisia would be lost. This is what I'm saying to all my friends, whether they are Islamists or they are not Islamists, reminding them that we are on the same boat, that this boat is sinking, and nobody would save his life if we do not work together, to save the boat. I'm working for this once again, but some people are they are understanding what I am saying. Others would stick to their old hatred, and unfortunately I cannot do anything for them. So be sure that the discussion are going on, and that I still hope that we will reach some agreements, so we can offer a real alternative to this fake dictator or to this fake democrat. We cannot say is something so strange for me that this man is the president of Tunisia. For the moment, what I can assure you that we were fighting not only for restoring democracy, but also for restoring independence, because Tunisia is now under the scrutiny of regional power, not international power, but regional power. They are scrutinizing, and they are protecting this dictator from a wrath of the Tunisian people. So it's a very difficult situation, but once again, I do believe that we'll find a solution.
Thank you, Dr. Marzouki. Thank you. We'll answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marzouki. I know that you have a plane to catch, and that we promised you to finish at 1:15. So we have 1 more minute left. Any closing comments or remarks that you would like to conclude with?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank all our friends from all from the United States, from everywhere, for this discussion. And I hope that that they must keep faith in our country, in our youth, that we're going to tackle those problems, and they're going to succeed once again to put Tunisia on the good path. Thank you, all of you. And thank you, Dr. Radwan Masmoudi, for this opportunity. Hope to see you next month in Washington, if I can come to Washington. So,
Inshallah. Thank you, Dr. Marzouki, for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry that we couldn't address all the questions. I know we still have almost another 20 questions from people who are in the audience, but unfortunately we are running out of time. Hopefully we can have Dr. Marzouki and former President Marzouki another time, and we can continue the discussion. We are all watching the situation in Tunisia very closely. There's supposed to be a big demonstration coming up this Saturday, this weekend, October 15th in Tunis, in downtown Tunis. So please pray for Tunisia, pray for the people of Tunisia, and pray for the democratic transition in Tunisia to continue and to be a shining model for the entire Arab world. Thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.